This is the Seahawkers Podcast, episode 432. I'm Brandon Schultz of the Military Seahawkers, and I am joined by my good buddy and Montana Seahawker, Adam Emmert.
You bet, buddy. A little free agency extravaganza here. I think, you came up with this idea better than anything I had for this time of year. Guess we're comparing our free agency period, the Seahawks, to our NFC West rivals. So that should be, interesting enough, right?
Yeah, we can throw out some grades. We've seen lots of other analysts grade teams and how well they've done in free agency. So, yeah, we can drop some grades on these things, too, because we need to compare how our Seahawks have done in free agency to how the other teams in the NFC West have done, because they're all making moves. Obviously, ours have been great. The other teams have been terrible. And we need to come out victorious as we go into 2024.
Yeah, well, the fun part is that every year throughout free agency, this is the time period where we all get fired up for different dudes and different signings and all that stuff. And, there's always that preseason winner of the crown. And 3/4 of these free agents at the end of the day, you're like, oops.
Yeah, it is a little bit. Well, free agency, it kind of is one of those things that you don't necessarily want your team to win, because usually the teams who win free agency are the worst teams that have a lot of cap money to spend. And so then they end up spending it on guys who, well, for one, their former teams either couldn't afford to pay them in some cases, which those are the better cases. It's the cases of where they're on a team that probably could have afforded them, but they chose not to. And so they're kind of giving up on a player because they don't think that he's worth the type of contract that he believes he's going to get in free agency.
Right. You get a lot of guys that the previous team said, well, the juice is not worth the squeeze here. And you're betting that your GM is just smarter than their GM, and their GM just spent the last 2, 3, 4 years with the guy. So it's an interesting time. Doesn't mean that you can't get better and there aren't guys that improve your roster. And sometimes too, it's just a matter of guy on X team wants this amount of money to play, guard or center or whatever. Just pick a position, wide receiver. It doesn't matter. And you happen to be super deficient at that place, or just, lacking a couple dudes. And so, hey, we've got a little bit of cap space. We can plug this guy in. It helps it in case somebody doesn't fall to us in the draft in case of need and that sort of thing. Kind of keeps you a little more balanced in the draft when it comes to best player available, drafting for need. So there's a lot of that too. Like, okay, fine. For that team, they had 3 extra wide receivers, and paying that guy that kind of money didn't make sense. But for you, hey, we only have 1 wide receiver on the roster. I'm not saying that's the case for the Seahawks. I'm just hypothetically, you have 1 wide receiver on the roster. Hey, okay, mid-tier contract for that guy. That works for us.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into free agency. And when I look, though, at the teams in the NFC West, if I were going to pick a team where I'd expect the media to be saying this team won free agency in the NFC West, and I think they would probably be pointing to the Rams.
To the Rams? Okay.
I think so. Because they spent a lot of money on the offensive line, which it's not a terrible thing to do. They spent a big contract on Kevin Dotson, keeping him in LA. And then they went out and they got Jonah Jackson from the Lions. And so I feel like even with just those 2 moves, and then they get Colby Parkinson from Seattle. The Seahawks had a ton of depth at tight ends. They weren't going to keep all their tight ends. Yeah, maybe that's one of those things that you can point to as Colby, maybe a good value signing for the Rams.
Oh, there you go. Or a little bit of regime change in there as well, where Mike comes in and says, yeah, he's fine, but I'd rather go a different direction. And then the Rams bring him in. And I like Colby Parkinson. I predicted him to have a breakout year last year. It didn't happen. And I think that was a pretty good sized overpay for the Rams.
A little bit of an overpay, but when you look at the depth that they have, I guess they had Hunter Long, Tyler Higbee, but Colby might be better than Hunter Long.
There's a definite possibility for that.
But they also, on defense, they get Darius Williams from Jacksonville. They get Cam Curl from the Commanders. And so I feel like in terms of names, and that's why I say part of free agency is signing your own dudes back if you're keeping good players, and then signing some of the bigger names. So that's why I feel like if I'm the media, I'm probably pointing more toward the Rams because you give them the LA bias too.
Well, there's a lot of that in there, no doubt about it. And then you also get the handsome Jimmy bump there as well. Him coming in to be the new backup. Look, I think their free agency is fine. And I'm a little jealous that they decided to invest in their offensive line. That bothers me as a opposing fan. There's no doubt about that because, man, they're going to go as far as Matt Stafford stays healthy. And if they can keep him upright, that's a big deal. So, those are smart moves there. But the big thing here is that we didn't get to celebrate this on a flagship show yet, Brandon. No Aaron Donald. He retires. That's a big loss. And I don't care who else you bring in on defense. They are not going to be the force multiplier that is Aaron Donald. I'm going to be so curious to see how this defense regresses next year without a super duper star up front in Aaron Donald. Because I really do think he was the perfume that masked a lot of stink on that defense with a lot of young players that looked quote unquote good because everybody had to concentrate so much on Aaron Donald.
And I look at the entire front seven because I think, like you said, it masks maybe a lot of issues throughout that entire group. And Byron Young was good.
Yes.
In his rookie season, Kobe Turner was pretty good, but is that going to be enough? Bobby Brown's fine. Michael Hoyt, he's only good when he plays the Seahawks. Christian Roseboom, the other inside linebacker, Ernest Jones, they're fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of that is made up for. And I don't think that the signings of, Darius Williams is an amazing corner or anything like that.
No.
So Kobe Durant, you got Quentin Lake. Yeah, that back end of the defense, I think, is going to end up suffering too with the loss of Aaron Donald. So they might be fine on offense. On defense, that's going to be a huge question.
With that said, like you mentioned some of the, lesser defensive linemen that were like, well, he was pretty good. Turner was pretty good. Young was pretty good. And, Bobby Brown, he was fine. Were they pretty good because they're playing alongside Aaron Donald, or were they pretty good?
Yeah.
I would like to think that those guys take a step back without the man, the myth, the legend in the middle, Aaron Donald.
The other move that you mentioned that's intriguing to me is going out and getting Jimmy Garoppolo as your backup quarterback, because it could end up not mattering at all because Stafford has been so durable. Like he gets hurt a lot, but he never comes out of the game generally unless he's really, really hurt. But then your backup is Jimmy G, who he's always getting hurt.
Yeah, exactly.
And can't stay on the field when he gets hurt.
I know that traditionally speaking with Matt Stafford over the whole bulk of his career, if you look at it in totality, you're absolutely right. He gets banged up, but he always goes out there and play. But 2 years ago, he missed a crap ton of the season. And last year, there were 2-3 times where you're like, ooh, that one could be the one that keeps him out from the whole season. And miraculously, at his age, with all that wear and tear on his body from all the huge hits that he's taken, because he is an incredibly tough dude, you can't take that away from him. I cannot predict a full healthy season for Matt Stafford this year. Like, that feels so unbelievably unlikely. Now, you throw handsome Jimmy back there to be the backup. If you got to finish the season out with him, are you going any further than you did this year? I doubt it.
Jimmy G is not going to be a playoff quarterback. Unless he comes in week 17,
right?
And then he doesn't have to survive all those weeks until the postseason. Then yeah, maybe. But he's had such a hard time staying healthy. It seems like a weird pick to go out and be like, yeah, that's the guy. That's who we're going to have backing up Matt Stafford.
the one part that I do like about it for the Rams, if I'm looking at it from their perspective, is, McVay is really good at working the middle of the field with, crossers and mesh and, deep overs and all that stuff,
which is what Jimmy
as well as Nakua and Cup. Like, they're really good at that. And that is Jimmy G's forte all day long.
Drop back and throw straight.
Throw straight. Yep. So, I mean, it could work that way.
Well, if I had to give the Rams a grade overall, though, just for the fact of Aaron Donald retiring alone, they get an F in free agency.
There you go. Yeah, if you're factored in the Aaron Donald part. I was going to say a C. I don't think that they got better.
I think the offensive line moves are pretty good. I might bump it up to a D.
So basically, because they brought in Jonah Williams, right?
And they kept Dotson.
And Dotson. So Dotson, the same, because he's the same guy.
Right. But they didn't lose a piece there. Like if you're having to fill in a gap at right guard, they might have, well, the Niners probably have the best offensive line. They probably have the second best.
I mean, the Rams did lose Tremaine Antrim, to the Seahawks. So that's a big loss.
That's true. Okay, I'll drop it back down to an F.
Okay. But I mean, literally though, like I look at it, I'm like, I don't know that they're like massively better on the offensive line, right? Did you get better? Your deficiencies, did you get better at? And I'm not sure that they did.
Their offense is not where I have the most concern.
No. Likewise.
They're a lot like the Seahawks in that way. It's which team, both teams have a good group on offense. Our receiving core obviously better, but they got a pretty decent group of guys with Nakua and Cup.
Yeah. Oh, you think? Yeah. Those guys are legit, no doubt about it.
Yeah, they're good. But this has got to be the year we get a win over the Rams.
You got to be. We're going to sweep the Rams this year.
Well, a team that we've consistently swept is the Arizona Cardinals, and looking at some of their moves in free agency, just a lot of guys that if I throw out their names, like you could maybe say, oh, I think I've heard of that guy. Well, the names that are going to be most recognizable to Seahawks fans, Evan Brown goes there, set to be, I think, backup center behind Froholt. DJ Dallas goes to Arizona, another recognizable name. Desmond Ridder, backing up Kyler Murray. They trade away Rondale Moore. This is the most baffling, especially once we saw all of the other quarterback swaps after this trade. Desmond Ridder for Rondale Moore, a player-for-player swap. And then we see the Seahawks swap picks for Howell, so they don't have to give up anybody. They just move back in the draft a little bit. Then you see Kenny Pickett go to the Eagles, also pick swaps. Nobody gives up anything. And then Justin Fields goes to the Steelers, and it's for picks that aren't even in their 2025 picks. So how dumb do the Cardinals look that they actually gave up a starting caliber player for a backup quarterback from the 2022 draft?
Right. And not only that, but let's put it in this perspective as well, Brandon. They had Josh Dobbs in the building last year. They could have just kept Josh Dobbs, right? Would you rather right now roll into a game with Ridder or Dobbs? Easily Dobbs.
Yeah.
Easily Dobbs.
He's a fine backup quarterback, and you didn't even get anything for him. It was a 6th round pick, maybe a 5th, if I remember right.
Yeah. Yeah. This seems like a goof up.
It was a day 3 pick.
This feels like a total goof up for Awesome Fart.
So that's a weird move. And then they bring in, now these are, I like to go off of the ourlads.com depth chart because it makes it real easy to see who the guys are and where they slot them in, is if they think that they're starting caliber for the team. And Jonah Williams, for example, left tackle, they get him from Cincy. That makes sense. You put him in as the starting left tackle. But then you go down the list, Chris Moore, who they got from Tennessee. That's about it on offense. On defense, maybe the most recognizable name, Sean Murphy-Bunting, cornerback from Tennessee. And then on the defensive line, they have all these guys listed as starters. Bilal Nichols, Kyrie's Tonga from Minnesota, Justin Jones of Chicago. And yeah, Nichols played for Vegas last year.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know one darn thing about Nichols. I like Tonga a little bit, though.
Yeah, he's probably the most recognizable of those defensive line names.
Mm-hmm. And look, I've always liked Sean Murphy Bunting. That dude can play.
He's okay.
He's fine. Yeah.
But he's not, I don't know if you can really say that they got better on defense with all these names.
I don't think he's a lockdown corner by any means. Do I think that Tyler Lockett can go out and turn, Sean Murphy Bunting around, every which way but loose? Yeah, absolutely. Tyler Lockett can still eat that guy's lunch. Like, that's not a problem. Shoot, JSN might even be able to.
That's not very nice.
No, I was saying, like, between DK, Tyler, and JSN, like, JSN is the third best of the three. Like, he's still, supposedly really good. Like, we're going to find out here. So, yeah.
And if I had to guess, they're set to go wide receiver with their top pick, because that's why you let Rondale Moore go. That's why you let Hollywood Brown leave town. And Michael Wilson was a good rookie receiver, 3rd round pick. So if they go out and they draft their number 1 this year, that makes some sense to me.
How do you not draft a quarterback?
They have Kyler.
Exactly. You have Kyler to go out there and run around and take a bunch of hits for a year, and then you grab one of these rookies and let him sit for a year.
Yeah.
And then you trade Kyler for a bag of balls like Justin Fields, and you move on. And you get out from under that contract.
They have pick number 4 and pick number 27 in the first round.
Yeah.
So they could go out and get a quarterback, but I think what most people are expecting is that Marvin Harrison Jr. goes to the Cardinals.
How good is Marvin Harrison Jr. at running 5-yard outs? I mean, I imagine he's good at it, but like, it'd be the only thing that he's doing.
Is that the offense that they're running now?
Well, I mean, Kyler Murray's a quarterback, is he not?
Yeah, but he could chuck it up deep to a guy who can come down with 50-50 balls on the regular.
So he's just going to give him the full D-Hop treatment? Catfish! Get D-Hop down there somewhere.
They need a D-Hop replacement, and maybe they view Marvin Harrison Jr. as that guy.
So they just need that guy for Kyler prayers down the field.
Why not?
God, what a waste of Marvin Harrison Jr. if that happens.
They could have worse options, I suppose, to go to Arizona and waste their career.
Sure. I mean, although the Devin Witherspoon Harrison matchup for the next, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years would be fun.
So as a whole, Arizona Cardinals, free agency grade, I'm going to give them an F.
Wow, you're tough. I was going to say C-. Another puddle of meh.
A lot of it's off that quarterback trade. That was silly.
Yeah, that's where the minus came from for me.
You can talk me up to a D-.
Well, then let's settle at a D, and because they're dumb. Freaking Cardinals.
It was a dumb free agency period for the Cardinals. They're banking on the draft.
Well, I mean, if you're that organization, wouldn't you be? Like, you're rebuilding that thing from the ground up.
Which seems to be the case almost every year.
I mean, they are consistent. You got to give them that.
That leads us to the San Francisco 49ers, who annoyingly, when you get to free agency and a team like the Niners, like, they have a lot of dudes who you look at and you go, oh yeah, there's no way they're not going to be able to keep Chase Young. He leaves. Leonard Floyd, they're not going to be able to keep him, right? Nope, he leaves. Javon Kinlaw, another guy that they're going to have a hard time paying. He leaves. So a lot of these guys where you look at and you say, oh yeah, they're going to have a hard time because they're losing all of these key pieces on the defense. But then, Cleveland Farrell, even, who they had brought in, he goes to Washington.
I think they did keep Leonard Floyd, at least according to their website here.
No, they actually signed Leonard Floyd. He wasn't on their team last year.
All right. Very good. Okay. That's what you had me confused. Okay.
Yeah. Leonard Floyd came in because they lost Chase Young.
Yeah, that makes sense. Although I would say their trade for Malik Collins is more the Chase Young replacement. That was a nice move. He's a player on the rise for sure.
See, I was thinking that was the Kinlaw replacement.
Who?
Javon Kinlaw.
Yeah, he's okay. I've always felt like he's been way overrated.
But he's more of an interior defender, which I think Malik Collins is.
I thought he was more of an edge player, but.
Well, they got Yetur Gross-Matos, too, from Carolina.
Yep.
Which, as a backup for Bosa. That's fine. He doesn't need to be out there a whole lot. But
no, but he's not a scrub.
The point is that I was looking for them to get worse on the defensive line, and then with the bringing in Collins, bringing in Floyd, like they kind of did a pretty good job of filling out those departures.
Yeah, this is what's so annoying about looking at their free agency / trade period thing here so far. You talk about defensive line, they bring in Ernest Brown, Malik Collins, Jordan Elliott, Gross Matos, Raymond Johnson III. They brought in 5 freaking dudes. Now, are every one of these guys great world beaters and like a Chase Young? No, absolutely not. But they sit and they spend money in the trenches, and it seems to help their team. I don't know if there's any other GMs out there paying attention, but, just something to note.
It does make me think, though, that this is when it comes cut down time to the 53-man roster, like they're not going to have 16 guys in their defensive line room.
No.
Like they're going to have to get rid of some of them.
Yeah, and that's totally fine. But why wouldn't you give yourself more lottery tickets at, one of the more important position groups in all of football and double down on your previous strength? Now, you mentioned Cleveland Farrell leaving. Like, that hurts. I mean, he's a quality rotational guy. And same with Sebastian Joseph Day.
Right.
I think that makes him worse, too. He ended up with the Titans.
He wasn't there all that long, so I didn't feel like a huge loss to me. But
well, I mean, you're just talking about proven-ish commodities, right?
Yeah, and we didn't even get to the linebacker because they get Devondre Campbell from Green Bay.
Yeah.
You look at the secondary, they bring in Isaac Yiadom. Is that how you say his last name?
I don't know a darn thing about him.
Nobody knows him because he played for the Saints before. And then Chase Lucas as another defensive back from Detroit.
Well, the good news is that they're definitely set at quarterback with Brandon Allen re-signing and being brought back into the fold for to be a backup.
That's important.
It's important.
And they got Josh Dobbs.
When did they get Dobbs?
This offseason.
Oh, I didn't see that one.
Sam Darnold goes to Minnesota and Josh Dobbs comes to San Francisco.
I like that less. I really like making fun of him about Brandon Allen more.
Well, see, now Brandon Allen's stuck at the 3rd string spot.
Yeah. What are you going to do if Juwan Jennings doesn't end up back on this roster, Brandon? Like, he's your favorite dude to make fun of offensively for the Niners.
I know. He might end up being their number 2 receiver if they can't find a way to keep Brandon Ayuk, because it seems Ayuk's going to be an interesting one to watch this offseason because he kind of feels like he's making some noise about wanting to get paid now. And the Niners really don't have the money to pay him now. It feels like, but I think they want to try and keep this group together with Debo, Ayuk, Kittle.
Yeah.
Have and Jennings, like have that group of receiving threats together for one more year. And Ayuk could be a wild card in this.
Well, a couple of things on that. One, yeah, you'd love to keep this group together so they can all revel in the misery of being yet a Super Bowl loser yet again, because you definitely want that vibe in the locker room, because that's going to be the biggest thing about this 49ers team. I don't give a crap who they sign, who they bring in for the most part. Like, this Super Bowl hangover is going to be a real thing for the Niners. This was a gut punch of all gut punches for them. And teams just don't come back from that. We tried to lie to ourselves, Brandon, after the Patriots Super Bowl. We did. And it mattered.
Like, bring it back. The coach will be, he'll bring it. He'll get it squared away.
We'll get it squared away. They'll have a kumbaya, yada, yada, yada. Right.
They fired the defensive coordinator. He was the biggest problem with that team.
Of course he is. Yeah. Shanahan is never, anybody with the last name Shanahan is never the problem. I have learned that in my years of watching football here. But the other thing about Ayuk is that dude's a number 2. He's a very good player.
Sure.
He's a very good player. But I don't know how many times I've seen clear number 2s in the NFL go out and get paid number 1 money and then never produce, and it's a total bust. Like, it happens. It used to happen a ton back in the day. It happens a little less now, but yeah.
I think if I were GMing this team for John Lynch, I absolutely would try my hardest to make sure that Ayuk stays on the team for this 1 year and then allow him to hit free agency and sign for a bunch of money somewhere else. Like, that would be the best way to go about it. Then you get the comp pick for it, which they've been crazy good at accumulating those, and find another receiver through the draft.
So basically what you do if you're John Lynch is you try to sell Ayuk on the Darrelle Revis plan. Like, look, bet on yourself with these 1 year deals, hit free agency almost every year, make more money than, anybody thinks that you should, and live your best life.
Well, it's not a 1 year deal for him because he's just on the final year of his rookie deal.
Oh, you're saying just tag him?
No, I'm saying you make him
because pick up the option.
Final year of his rookie contract, which guys, he's played well enough to at least ask for it to say,
for sure,
I want to get paid, long-term deal, sign me now.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's a guy that you want to do that with.
Wouldn't he sit out at that point?
He could, but
demand a trade, have a hissy.
Yeah, which is what he should do.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. If they're not going to give you your cheddar, like, that's what you do.
As long as it takes. Juwan Jennings should sit out too. He was drafted in 2020.
Is that the year
he's making 7th round pick money?
Yeah, that's crazy. He is better than that. So
he can sit out too. Debo, he should probably sit out just because he wants a raise.
Oh, no, I want all these guys to play and revel in their 7-win season as they go through a Super Bowl hangover season, just like the Eagles last year.
Good point. That'd be fine too. Both solid strategies.
Yeah.
Whatever works to make them lose the most games, I think, is what I'm okay with.
Well, it's already written. Like, they could do whatever strategy they want going into this season. Like, this is what happens to teams that have devastating Super Bowl losses. It's what happens.
And we know. We lived it.
Yep.
And they tried to do the right thing by firing a coordinator. Seahawks didn't do that.
Yeah, scapegoat Wilkes.
Yep. I would have liked, if we were to go back in time, I would have liked to see if the scapegoat idea would have worked for the Seahawks. I don't think it necessarily would have, but I just as another option, I would have liked to see it.
I think about the only thing that would have worked is if Pete would have said, okay, you guys can pick on Russ as much as you'd like in practice. Like, we're taking the gloves off. You don't have to talk to him in a different way. No. And to have a sit down with Marshawn and be like, look, I really wasn't trying to get Russ the MVP. This was the look. It like really, really, really explained it to the team, because you listen to all the guys talk years later and they're all like, yeah, I don't really know what happened there. There was never any clear mea culpa and all of that. I think that probably would have gone a long ways. Instead, they were just kind of glossing.
Yeah, I think that the Niners issues are even bigger than that.
Oh, I do too.
For losing the Super Bowl, going into this offseason, they can't recover through that through free agency. They get a D-.
Okay. I was going to give him a B. I thought it was a solid offseason. Like, if you're going to, take the Super Bowl hangover part out of it that they can't avoid, that's fine. But in terms of, they had some key losses on the defensive line. They brought in some guys that I think can plug those holes and they can move forward, and their linebackers are still good. And what happened to the linebacker in the Super Bowl? Not Werner, but the other one. I can't believe I'm Greenlaw. Did he tear his Achilles?
He did.
Okay,
which is why the Devondre Campbell move is kind of a big one.
That makes more sense there. Yeah.
He could help fill that void there.
Yeah, I couldn't remember if it was the Achilles or if it was something a little lesser that, like, he could be back, but he probably wouldn't be.
No, I think it's full Achilles, and he's going to be pushing it to make it back. It's such a crazy, weird injury.
Yeah. No, don't wish that on anybody, man. Really don't.
I kind of wish it on him, but I shouldn't.
Well, as long as you recognize it, then you're still a good person.
I think you talked me up to a C-, though. Okay.
Yeah. I'm trying to be fairish. I mean, shoot, we go through the Seahawks offseason grades here, and a quadruple plus, right? Knocked it out of the park. I appreciate you trying to be fair and all. I'm trying to do this based on heart rather than, I appreciate that. Honestly and realistically.
So,
let the sport hate floweth, Brandon. Let it go. I love it.
I'm trying. We do these individual episodes in the off season, and a lot of times we don't get that chance to really let it flow here through the first part of free agency. So
that's a good point. Yeah, I don't know that we've ever done this exercise before. I don't know if you can tell.
If people are still tuned in at this point, maybe we did all right.
Well, the funny thing is, dude, I looked at these things and I'm like, oh yeah, I know that guy. I know that guy. Kind of know that guy. I've heard of him, maybe. Like the majority of the dudes on the list, you're like, oh my gosh, like I thought I followed this league. And yeah, there's a lot of it that I have a hard time.
There's so much movement that happens in free agency, though, which I think one of the reasons it's kind of helpful to do this. I mean, I don't even know if I heard about Evan Brown going to the Cardinals. I knew he wasn't back with Seattle.
I don't think he signed, but just a couple days ago, if that helps you at all.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. Hey, but we did forget to mention that the Cardinals, they re-signed LJ Collier for another 1-year deal for nothing. Yes. What dirt does he have on the NFL, man? Because he keeps getting contracts.
He's hanging in there. Good for him, I guess.
Oh, keep getting them checks all day. Yeah.
It kind of shows you that Cardinals defense must not be that good.
No.
It is pretty stark contrast, though, when you look at the amount of depth on the defensive line in San Fran versus the amount of depth. It's like they have LJ Collier as the backup defensive end.
Right.
I don't know if LJ Collier makes the fifth best guy on the Niners of their defensive ends.
Look, and no disrespect to LJ Collier, but he's a practice squad guy. That's his talent level, unfortunately. Now, if he can keep getting paid as a backup, that's great, dude. Have at it, man. I'm stoked for you.
I just wish that Schneider would have recognized that when, I don't know, before he drafted him.
Well, yeah. I mean, they can't all be winners, that's kind of where it's at. And it's going to be interesting to see where John goes in this draft after the free agency period, because, you do feel a little bit better about defensive line and, you start to feel a little better about safety. I know you don't, but, Love and whoever else they decide out of the guys that they brought in there, I don't hate it.
The thing that makes me feel better about safety is that there is still a lot of veteran depth out there.
Yes, very much so.
And I feel like they need like a solid 8-9 year veteran that's been out there to come in, and whether or not he starts or is a backup, I think they need that guy on the back end of the secondary.
Yeah. And with the market being as it is, and like you said, as deep as the pool is, I would imagine that you're going to have that opportunity in, what does John call that? The third stage of free agency, like after the draft, I think is kind of what he was talking about. The third or the fourth. I don't know. Right. I couldn't keep track of it, but yeah, there's going to be an opportunity there.
Or we just get Budda Baker to talk his way out of Arizona and find a way to get him back to Seattle.
Well, yeah, if there was a just and fair God, then yes, that's exactly what would happen for Budda, because he doesn't deserve to be down there. Come back to Washington.
We want Budda back. Come on now.
Yeah.
Let's make it happen. Linebacker, I think I stepped on you a little bit when you were talking about getting back to linebacker, but there was some interesting news that we heard from John Schneider this past week in that, based on what he saw and the coaches were seeing, Jerome Baker, the linebacker they brought in from Miami, will be the replacement for Jordan Brooks, and that Tyrell Dodson would be the middle linebacker.
Oh, I thought it was the other way around.
I thought so too. It just in my mind and the body type but that's when he went on Seattle Sports this week. Those are the positions that he said will linebacker for Baker and Mike linebacker for Dodson.
Okay. And you're sure about that? I swear he said it the other way around.
No, that's
okay.
I went back and I listened to it 5 times.
Okay. All right. Gotcha. I misheard what I wanted to hear, apparently.
Maybe he misspoke. I don't know, but
I'm glad you straightened me out, though. Yeah.
And maybe it'll still remain to be seen, but it kind of makes me think that they might not be done at middle linebacker then, because I don't know if Tyrell Dodson, to me, strikes me as a starting middle linebacker.
Little small. I'd like to see a little bigger dude there, but then again, we definitely needed to get faster at linebacker. And, if you have a little smaller guy, hopefully a little quicker, I could see it maybe working out.
It does lead us, though, to some of those areas where you talk about drafting, and plenty of spots on the defense, spots on the offensive line still.
Man, you know what I didn't realize with the Nick Harris signing is that he had only had 4 starts with the Browns. I thought he had played like a season.
No.
Yeah. Feel worse about that now.
Our Lads does have him listed as the backup center, which I think if you were just to guess, that might feel right.
Okay.
But that means that Oluwatimi is going to then be your starting center after one rookie season.
And I don't hate that. I like Olu. And you got to think that Mike knows Olu pretty well, right? Coming from Michigan and all that. Yeah.
And maybe they saw enough this last year. They feel like he can be that guy. It's not like Evan Brown he's not going to Arizona to start, for example.
Yeah, which is a little bit, not surprising that in Arizona he's not going to start because the center there was decent. But you would think that there was a starting spot somewhere in the NFL at center for him. I thought he acquitted himself just fine last year.
Yeah, he was fine.
Yeah.
And maybe he just wanted to be in Arizona. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe like there's a whole lot of pressure placed on you.
Maybe he just likes being a desert rat.
Could be. Just likes the warm weather.
Dude, that is too warm, dude. No, thank you.
Yeah, you get to play in a dome.
I guess.
He doesn't have to be there all year round. He just has to go hang out there once the season starts.
I suppose. You just go from your air-conditioned bubble to the next one.
Arizona kind of sounded good to me, though, after we get with it being 60 degrees here in Montana all last week, and now we have 2 inches of snow on the ground.
Yeah, and I'm happy for that. I will take all the snow that we can get from here on out. Please, 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 because there hasn't been much at all. But yeah, it has been oddly warm, which in some ways has been great because then I can do all these things outside. But then again, it's kind of a bummer because the lack of moisture could be an issue.
It gets worked out one way or the other every year.
Oh, sure. Yeah. A lot easier for you to say in suburbia. Here in the sticks, it gets a little more spicy.
Just pray for rain every day. That's all you have to do.
Dude, I do a lot more than that. There's a whole naked dance outside, the whole thing. I've got a song that I won't sing. And yeah, it's great.
Well, we're going to take a break. I'm going to talk you into singing it as we come back and get started with the second half of the show.
Ain't happening, but that sounds fun.
Couple of topics as we head into the second half of the show. Want to talk some tackling, some of the rules around that, and talk about maybe what Pete Carroll has got going on based on one of the questions we've got from one of our longtime listeners. I want to start off, though, with the hip drop tackle, Adam, because a lot of talk about that in the news this past week because the competition committee is talking about outlawing that as a potential strategy for defensive players to bring down the offensive players. And I think one of my biggest problems with this is the language that people are using around the tackle.
Oh, okay. Like what phrases in particular?
Well, because a lot of people say that they just call it the hip drop tackle. And I think for most fans, just because when we've talked about it, we have an idea what it looks like. But then you read the actual rule and it calls it the swivel hip drop tackle, which I think means something different than, because just through, people who have played football or played rugby, they think of a hip drop tackle as just when you grab a hold of somebody and you drop your hips as a way to drop to put your weight down. So that way you can bring down a person. And there's a safe way to do a hip drop tackle because it's just, dropping your weight down and bringing a guy to the ground and avoiding their legs. Like that can be done as a hip drop tackle, but the swivel hip drop tackle is the one I think that people are more familiar with in terms of the injury risk, where a guy grabs onto somebody and then he swivels his hips around. So he's almost in a sitting position. And then he does the sitting position drop right on the back of a player's legs. And those are two very different types of tackles.
Yeah, for sure. And, listening to John's explanation of what he thinks the rule will be, it sounds like they're going to make that pretty clear that you got to have that kind of flip of the hips to where your legs and kind of a lot of your weight are coming down on the backside of the runner's legs. And, I understand that guys get injured that way and all that stuff. I mean, shoot, Geno took one this year and that hurt him. Now, with that said, like, how often is this really happening? And on top of that, like, how many guys are doing it intentionally? Like, there's a while there, like horse collars, right? You'd see guys drag people down horse collar, like on purpose, quite a bit way back in the day. Like, that was just like, oh yeah, I'm grabbing him here, I'll jerk him down. It doesn't feel like guys were going out of their way to use this technique in terms of getting guys down. It was kind of more just momentum and the way things happened in a play is usually how those things worked out. So, while you're going to legislate against it, I don't know, man. I think it's going to be tough on defensive players because I don't know how many dudes were out there doing this with intent.
The one where Geno got hurt, it felt like it was an intent type thing, though, because Geno was running out of bounds. And why would you feel like you have to tackle in that way for a guy running out of bounds to be able to take him down?
So the part of the Geno play that bothered me was the running out of bounds part, like whether he does hip drop or horse collar or just tags him or whatever it is, right? Like, that was the part of that play there. I was like, hey, like you chill out. But in terms of the tackle itself, it didn't feel like he like sized him up and was like, ooh, I'm going to do a hip swivel, hip drop tackle on Geno as he's going out of bounds.
The only thing I can think of is that you play how you practice. And if you're practicing that as a way, because it is a lot more of an effective method to get a guy to the ground, then you probably practice it that way a lot. And so why not practice it the other way, like the guys playing rugby normally do and try and avoid a guy's legs? And I think most NFL players probably do that too, but I can understand where defensive players are coming from because, hey, you're taking a tool out of our tool bag that we can't use to bring a player down. But on the other side, like, I don't want to see dudes get their legs and ankles twisted and sprained and broken.
Yeah, I mean, I get it from the trying to eliminate injuries from the game part of it and make the game safer and all that. And again, too, how often is this happening? I don't think that it's going to be a major thing throughout the season, right? I can't imagine it happens, more than 5 times a week.
So I guess the question is, could you take it out with a fine rather than a penalty?
That was my next question for you, actually, because I honestly really think that they should just go the fine route.
You can get it out that way effectively by saying, yeah, if you do it this way, you will get fined.
Absolutely. And guys care a lot more about their money than 15 yards. I can guarantee you that.
I think it would go into the rule books as an unnecessary roughness penalty. And there's plenty of other ways that you could consider a play to be unnecessarily rough. I don't know. I lean that way too. I think, though, it could be a finable thing because, again, you go back to the Geno play. That could have been an unnecessary roughness call, and maybe that guy got fined because it is kind of did he start the tackle while he was in bounds? Because if that's the case, then it wouldn't be a roughness issue.
Right. So I guess kind of one of the other reasons I think going the fine route is the better way to go is that in real time, even though the officials apparently told John, oh, no, we'll see this easy. It won't even be a problem.
I don't believe the officials, by the way, who say that, we could see this one easily. Can you?
Still don't know what a catch is. Like, you're going to be able to do this? Like, I'm not on board with putting it in the officials' hands. So what it does is that they're not throwing a flag for it throughout the game, which means that when guys get fined for this, it's because the league has gone back and looked at the tape, taken the time and been like, yep, that's what we're talking about. They get it right. You get the fine sent. Doesn't change the course of a game necessarily. I think that's the better way to handle it because putting another judgment call in the hands of the officials, no, thank you.
And then it would slow down the game.
Yes.
By throwing another penalty.
Throwing another penalty.
Then could you get rid of the horse collar then as a penalty? Or would you just keep that just because it's that big of a safety issue?
I would keep the horse collar one because it is a safety issue. And then also too, because it's obvious as hell. Like that one's really hard to get wrong. It doesn't happen very often that get it wrong.
You've seen it sometimes get wrong because they grab like the guy's shoulder pad and it kind of looks like the horse collar. Just
like, but 90% of the time they get it right.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's not like PI where it feels like 50-50 of them are right or wrong.
Yeah. And but that's always going to be a hard one to try and get right anyway.
No, it's not. They just need to hire your daughter, man. Like she knows what a catch is. I bet you she can do PI real well too.
Probably.
Yeah.
We just need a group of kids that know this better than the adults.
We'll call them the Common Sense Consortium.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We've been pounding the table on that for years.
Yeah.
Got a couple questions in. We've got an email from John the Bard Davison. Says, "Hi, fellas. I'm following all the news from afar and am a little confused. First of all, what is Pete's role going to be, if any? Then this is the one I'm having difficulty getting my head around. I know we were butting up against the salary cap and needed some space, and it was obvious Adams was going in December, but quite a few more have gone too. We now have cash to spare and are bringing people in the right positions, but they don't seem to be blue chip. That's not going to say there aren't any bargains out there, but I have said who when we have signed someone. Who, you ask, is the best signing so far? Easy. The British defensive coordinator, Aden Dirty. Another good reason to support the Hawks now that we are multinational. So proud a Brit is now a coach in the NFL, and he's only from 300 miles away or so from where I lived instead of 5,000 miles. Barry the WC says good luck with Howell, although he is a backup. My point here is where do we go from this year, up or down? Hopefully it's a run in the playoffs, but I'm not sure. Or do we go backwards in order to pick up a Mahomes-type quarterback in the draft, and we'll have to sink pretty low to draft that high? I'm confused. Please help. Go Hawks. From John.
I think we're all suffering a case of the Owls when it comes to free agency a little bit. You know, the who in a lot of ways. I do see the vision in terms of, you know, turning the roster over at certain position groups. In linebacker made sense. Now the guys they bring in, again, not necessarily household names, but you're like, okay, I can get it. And maybe, you know, with Coach Mike, it'll go in the right direction. But in terms of where do we go this year, I genuinely believe that this will more likely be a step back in some degrees record wise. But I'm hoping that what we see is, you know, some consistency in terms of the philosophy and aggression of the defense going forward. If you can feel it ascending throughout the season and know that, okay, we're a couple players short of really executing this and we end up 2 wins less or 3 wins less than last year. Okay. That's fine by me.
I can see where that confusion might be because it's not obvious. And I think it was not obvious just in terms of the free agency strategy too, because they freed up a lot of cap space, but then a lot of that was then there to sign Leonard Williams and they signed Noah Fant. So those would have to be your blue chip signings though in free agency because it goes back to what we were talking about at the top of the show too. A lot of times the guys that you're getting, the blue chippers in free agency, a lot of them are like Draymond Jones, who we got last year. And a lot of those guys don't work out how you hope.
Right. You are either getting a guy that's a little over the hill, but you're like, no, he can turn back the clock a little bit here. Or it's a guy like Draymond where you're like, ooh, he's flashed a little bit. Haven't seen the consistency, hasn't had the playing time. He's young. I'm banking on his upside. Let's pay the man.
Mm-hmm.
And
it worked out with Nwosu, Uchenna Nwosu, one of those guys that worked out that way.
It did. And, you know, so far in the Draymond experience, no, it hasn't worked out to the number that's on the contract. I think that there's other moves on the defensive line that are going to help with that. And I think that's exciting. And really the part in free agency that makes me wonder, are we going forward or backwards, is just offensive line, especially interior offensive line. Like, that's got me really worried. I mean, Geno's going to need a little protection up front, just a little
bit.
Like, I don't think that's an unfair ask.
But they had, Edwards was okay. We saw some flashing from Olu. And then, I would just feel a lot better about the offensive line if Delu had stayed. And it kind of leads into the next question, too, because, and I do want to go back, though. We didn't cover all of the questions, but I wanted to get to Garen's question because he said, do you think any players left the Seahawks because they don't know what the future holds for this team? Without the continuity of Pete, did some of them jump ship? Yes, I know some of them were not invited back. There could be players who chose not to be in Seattle in order to hedge for something better with their career. And that's one of the things that I don't think we know with guys like Damian Lewis, with guys like Jordan Brooks. Did they choose to leave because, hey, I kind of liked getting coached by Pete, and now there's a lot of turnover. There's uncertainty. Why not go somewhere else where maybe I like to live a little bit better down south?
Yeah, it sounded like with Dame Lou, it was a bit on the money factor. Like he got paid. He got paid to go down to Carolina there, and good for him. I think that's awesome. As far as Brooks goes, I don't know. I think one of the things that, in terms of these players making these decisions, whether or not it's, okay, Pete's gone, I don't like the continuity, so I'm going to leave. It's a different culture. I don't want to stick around for that. Or if it's more like, oh, okay, there's now a change. And since there's change, that allows me the opportunity to change as well. And not so much that they're down on the fact that the culture isn't being continued, but more just like, oh, well, this change presents opportunities. And maybe I'm not exactly sure where I fit in with, Coach Mike. And, I kind of like the idea of going over here, and there's some connections I have there, or whatever it is.
But I do think that there are players who end up moving on because a coach moves on. And it's real tough to know unless they tell us explicitly. With Jordan Brooks, a big part of it too is how much does it feel like the team wants me? And one of the things we heard from John Schneider is that the Dolphins were real quick to try and get him on board in those first parts of free agency. And so he may have just gotten the sense that, hey, they want me more down here in Miami.
Yeah. And as a Seahawks fan, I don't know how that makes you feel, really. Like, okay, so we take Baker and they immediately want to go get Brooks. And you're like, wait a second. Does that mean that they think that, obviously they think Brooks is better than Baker?
Right.
Yeah.
So, why did we swap here?
We're going to find out who's right and who's wrong, I guess.
And they're getting paid about the same amount of money. So,
yeah.
Except 1 year deal versus long term, which there's an argument to be made for those types of contracts either way, right? Because in one sense, you sign a dude to a 3-year deal, you can push back some of the money with that signing bonus. You can kind of have more of that toward the back end of the contract when the salary cap's going up. 1 year deal, you hope that you get the value. The nice thing is that you aren't stuck with the guy long term. If he turns out to have one bad year, you can kind of use that year to get to know him and decide if you do want to sign him long term. But then he could end up going somewhere else afterward if he doesn't like it there. So those types of contracts are a tough balance, I feel like. And it seems like Seattle does more of those 1 year contracts than they don't with free agents.
Yeah. I mean, they do it enough, no doubt about it. I guess I don't mind the risk, because also too, like, if it doesn't work out, then instead of having the cap number pushed out over 3-4 years, like, you're just clear of it the next year. Yeah.
And in free agency, again, it's feels more rare that those guys end up coming in and being your, I don't know, Uchenna Nwosu type guys.
In a lot of ways, paying linebackers feels a lot like paying running backs.
And in that case, you may want to do short-term deals. Going back to what John was saying, especially with Barry saying good luck with Howell, although he's the backup. One of the things that we heard over a couple times now, John Schneider reiterating Geno Smith as the starting quarterback. We saw an interview that Coach Mike Macdonald did with one of the NFL.com guys that made it sound like Geno's clearly the guy, Sam Howell going to be the backup. So we've got a couple different points now where they're trying to make it clear that Geno Smith the starter, Sam Howell the backup.
Yeah, there's not a lot of ambiguity there. And I like that. Like, let's just settle that right now. Let's take that pressure off of Sam Howell as well. And we all know that we've heard John Schneider talk about this too, and Pete over the last couple of years, how much Geno's confidence grew when they were like, yep, okay, you're the dude now. And why not, stay on that and keep that moving forward and still get the best out of Geno. I think it's a good move all the way around, and I think it's a proper move. Geno Smith is a better quarterback than Sam Howell right now.
And that's not to say that Sam Howell, with a little bit more maturity, a little bit more playing time, can't grow and develop. And I think that's part of the thing that they're banking on. That's why I think we heard John Schneider reference that Sam Howell is only 23 and talking about some of these quarterbacks that are coming out of the draft being older, 24. There is still some of that time for development.
No doubt about it. And do they get a quarterback this year? I don't know, maybe. Could they get one next year? For sure. Like, they're around. You guys gotta, maybe not in the quantity that they are in this year's draft. But then again, like, it still feels just as scarce as ever because so many teams looked at it and were like, oh, well, get rid of our guy and we'll be ready to draft the next one. And it seems like while there's more quarterbacks, there's even more chairs to fill.
It seems like John Schneider takes a strategic approach with just the way that he talks about the quarterbacks, because he talked up Drew going into free agency. Drew ends up getting an opportunity with the Giants to where he might be able to start. And now they make the trade for Howell. Could he be talking up Geno now as a way going into the draft to where if a team doesn't get the quarterback that they want, maybe they see Geno as a guy who could be traded for? I'm just keeping so many options open in my brain because I don't know what's going to happen in this offseason. Like, could the Seahawks still draft a quarterback in the first round with the pick that they're at? Could they try and move up? Could they move back and get rid of Sam Howell and then have another backup quarterback? Like, I feel like so many of these options are on the table now that it's kind of crazy.
It's wide open, and with having the big hole in the middle of the draft right now with picks, I'd still put my money on them trading back here at 16.
Trading back, adding an earlier third round pick probably makes a little bit of sense.
Yeah.
And then finally, John, I want to be crystal clear on this, because there is a lot of confusion about what Pete Carroll's role is going to be with the Seahawks moving forward, because we heard from the team. They put out the statement saying that Pete Carroll is going to have a role with this team going forward. He's Pete Carroll's retired.
Yeah.
He's there if John Schneider wants to send him a text, and it's the nice way of saying we're still going to pay Pete Carroll. And then, yes, if he needs to come in and be a consultant on a case-by-case basis, as in, does John Schneider send him a text and say, hey, what do you think about this? Then maybe that's what he's getting paid for. But there's no official role.
No. And they're trying to keep that a clear break, right? And give Mike a chance to actually establish his culture. So makes a lot of sense. But no, Pete won't be involved hardly at all, if any.
That's what I think. I think it was a nice way of saying that we still like Pete. We want him to be involved if there is a role. But unless they had a role for him, they would have come out and said what the role is by now.
Right.
All right. Got a note from the snail. Oh, I wanted to mention something to the snail too, because he was having a hard time getting into our Discord. And I think I may have had an old link via YouTube. So if you signed up through YouTube and you try and click on the link to get into our Discord, it may not stick. And if it doesn't work out, email me, gohawks@seahawkerspodcast.com. We'll try and get that worked out. So if you're getting kicked out of the Discord routinely, it's not anything that we're doing. It's just part of, I think, how the link gets handled. But the snail says, don't forget, Adam, everyone complained Pete wouldn't target the middle of the field. Huskies offense didn't use the middle of the field either. It was a perimeter attack.
It very much was. And I think some of that too is some of the things that Penix does really, really well. The zone hole shots, like that's his jam all day. He's really good at it. And so you'd play to those strengths, especially with the receivers. And I understand all that. But it is really kind of concerning how little that they use the middle of the field and how little they ran the ball. It's just, it is what it is. And we're not going to know until the season, and we could all talk in circles about it. I'm dubious because I go by what people do, not what they say. But Ryan Grubb says other things. Mike says other things. We'll see if they prove that right. I don't know. None of us really can. But yeah, buckle up.
And I think part of the reason for taking that approach, how often did we hear from Pete Carroll and everybody else that, oh, well, Pete, he likes to run the football and he's a guy that focuses on the run. This team hasn't been a running team for the past 2 years, and they've drafted running backs high in the draft, and they still haven't been a running football team. Not consistently.
And then you hear the rest of the talk. Well, we'd run it more, but we got to do this to get more to get to our stuff. And it was absolutely maddening. Absolutely maddening.
So yeah, we'll see what ends up happening. We'll see what ends up happening with our executive producers going into this offseason. I expect great things, as always, from them, including DCH, Brian Shaw, John DeSmartu, Garen Taylor, and Has No Clue. Big thanks to our team of executive producers.
Heck yeah, man. Nothing but taking yet another leap into greatness.
We've also got some donations in from it's been a little while since we've done this, Adam, but we have had some folks come in. We've got Randy Horner, who came in with a $60 donation via Venmo. You can send us Venmo to @Hawkra. And he says, Seahawkers Podcast 2024 season franchise tag payment. Adam, we've been tagged.
Been tagged? That's fine. I'll gladly play under the tag because we do this for the love of the game.
Yeah, we're like Darrelle Revis. We'll go year by year. It doesn't matter.
Sure. Yeah. Appreciate that a lot, Randy. Really do. And all your support, in the comments and everything.
Lander came in at €5 a month. Welcome to the flock to Lander.
Heck yeah, Lander. Appreciate you too, man.
Also wanted to say thanks to some of the people who have given us reviews out on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. We haven't read reviews in a while, Adam.
Yeah, it's been a minute. Those are all fun. They're always fun, though.
They are fun. We've got a 3-star one from Gordolito Bandito.
Okay.
Back in January. Pure chalk. Opinions as chalk as a gymnast bag.
Oh, okay.
I wonder what that show is about.
I don't know. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, sometimes you just, have a boilerplate opinion because the mainstream narrative happens to match your opinion. It happens, Happens. But yeah, that's fine. I'll take a meh. That's okay.
We got 4 stars from Dan 3 Pure. Mistake of fact. Love the pod, but come on, Grubb called the plays at UW. We cleared that up on the next show.
Shoot, not only that, I believe I said in the episode that we didn't know, that I was like, I read that somewhere. I'm not sure that it's true, and I hope somebody in the comments straightens me out. I'm like 90% sure I said something like that in that episode.
Well, He straightened us out in the reviews, so
yeah.
Well, hey, we take that. 1 star, Frank Reich by Creep253. Frank effing Reich. I just unsubscribed after I heard you say Frank should have gotten a look as head coach. I agree with this one. We deserve that 1 star.
That's not what I said.
Now, you said offensive coordinator, not head coach. So this guy
surely
take a fact.
Yeah. So that's cool. I mean, I'll take a 1-star review on something that I didn't say. That's fine. Yeah.
That's okay. Creep253 will be back.
They always are.
And we got 5 stars from 12th Man, SB 2019. Interesting creative show. Go Seahawks with some green and blue hearts. Go Hawks, 12th Man, SB 2019.
Yeah, go Hawks, man. Appreciate that. We do appreciate the reviews a ton. We do this value for value thing. If you can get in the flock and you do the Patreon thing, we appreciate that. If you can do a one-time donation, that's awesome if we bring value to your life. You can do comments, and reviews. shoot, that's great too. Like if you don't have the coin and you've been a freeloader for a while and you're feeling a little guilty about it, it's a great way to go about it. So we appreciate all of you guys and the value for value that you guys give us back. Even 1-star unfactual reviews. Appreciate that.
Yeah, it's one more review and it ends up being content for the show. So it's a bonus for us all. And yeah, getintheflock.com if you want to help support the show, if you want to donate via Patreon, and get into our Discord, join us there. And you can go to youtube.com/Seahawkers podcast. Shoot, we've got a YouTube sponsor, Adam, aura.com, AURA.com/Hawkra. And you can help support the show that way by checking out one of our YouTube sponsors.
Heck yeah. You go to that link. You can sign up for a free 14-day trial. And we get a little kickback for everybody who does that. And we'd appreciate it a ton. Makes a big, big difference for us. And it's a cool product to check out, too. One of those things that we'll be plugging a little bit more going down the stretch here.
And I always forget to throw this out. If you go to getintheflock.com and sign up, we do the ad-free shows all the time right through there. So if you come across that we've plugged an ad in YouTube and you're like, oh, I don't need the ads, you just you go and you want the audio versions, then because I don't think we can take the ads out of YouTube, but all the audio versions go to getintheflock.com and the feed through there.
You betcha. We'll give it to you about any which way you'd like it.
On to do better and better at life.
All right, Brandon. My do better this week is for ramblinfan.com and Brett Stutter, the author of this article here. Title is One Free Agent Move from Each NFC West Division Rival That Rams Fans Can Laugh At. Well, they had some, interesting takes on some of the other teams, but really the one about the Seahawks, this blew my mind. Like, I can't imagine waking up every day and being so wrong just by, my fandom to start with and having picked the LA Rams to be my team. But then to wake up and write an article like this and then to pick the Seahawks' best free agent signing and say it's the one to laugh at. He chooses Seahawks new defensive tackle, Jonathan Hankins, who is easily the best free agent signing for this team because of what it's going to mean for this team going forward. But here's his rationale as to why this was a signing you could laugh at. He says, he managed to get 3 quarterback sacks and 27 tackles. That's impressive on just 351 defensive snaps. But since 2019, he's only put up 5.5 quarterback sacks. That's an average of 1 quarterback sack and 36 tackles a year. That is not a lot from a defensive starter. Do you even know how football works? Do you know what defensive tackles do? Jonathan Hankins is not there to be a sack artist. He's there to soak up blocks so that your sack artist can get home. That's why he's good. That's the whole point of having there. His next paragraph, getting bigger by itself does little to improve a team. It doesn't. That's exactly what you need to do up front. On a defensive line that's been chronically undersized for a number of years now. This is the biggest thing in the world. Not only does it free up the big free agent signing or re-signing in Leo Williams, bringing him back, but it helps give value to the Draymond Jones contract so that he has a little more room to work around. And he says, in fact, comparing to him, Hankins, to former Seahawks player Mario Edwards Jr., the Seahawks may have regressed substantially. They don't play the same fucking role. They're both interior linemen, yes, but Mario Edwards is not a defensive tackle. He's not. It doesn't make any sense. And he finishes the whole thing up with, Rams fans are more than happy to get a hearty guffaw at the Seahawks' expense. I believe this is one more occasion to do so. Well, you believe wrong because it's stupid. That none of the things that you say support your argument because they don't support what a good defensive tackle is. So to Ramblin' Fan and Brett Stutter, do better.
Bobby Brown sure sucks for the Rams. That dude in his 3 years in the NFL only has half a sack. What a bum. What a bum of a defensive tackle for the Rams.
Yeah, that's what nose tackles do, man. Like, you know how many nose tackles are Aaron Donald and Chris Jones? You know, I guess Chris isn't really technically a nose tackle,
No,
but
they're defensive ends in the 3-4, but yeah.
Yeah. But like, how many Aaron Donalds exist in the world?
Yeah, Chris Jones, Aaron Donald, they're the only two guys that actually rush the passer effectively and consistently play inside.
Yes. I mean, Leo's good there as well, but I mean,
if he does double-digit sacks, I mean, that's crazy.
That's crazy. If Draymond does double digits, that's crazy. But they're more likely to do it now that Hankins is in the middle.
Right.
God.
Well, my do better this week is for our Seattle Seahawks, Adam. The Seahawks NFL Players Association report card went in the wrong direction this past year because they were in 11th in the 2023 report card. They dropped down to 14th in part because they didn't address any of the concerns from the previous Players Association report card. So the thing about this too, and you probably have seen the news reports by now because it's probably old news at this point, but it's kind of our opportunity as fans to hear what the real players' issues are within the organization. And the thing that struck me the most, because a lot of us have complained about injury issues over the years, and we're like, oh yeah, those strength and conditioning coaches, they must stink. But it turns out that the strength coaches have gotten an A in back-to-back years from within the Seahawks organization. So it kind of gives us a clue to say, oh, well, they actually kind of like these strength and conditioning coaches. But the place where they didn't grade out well was with the training and recovery staff. And part of the report says that they have lack of staffing and resources provided in the training rooms, with some of the respondents noting that there aren't enough quality trainers, and that limits the player's ability for one-on-one treatment for injury recovery and prevention. So all this time, these last couple of years, I feel like we've been pointing the finger at the wrong place when the players are saying, hey, this is a place where it needs to be better, and that would help improve the team. So that got a low grade. Team travel was a low grade. One other thing that it says in there that the Seahawks are just one of 7 teams without first class seating. And at first I'm like, oh, boo-hoo, you don't have first class seating. But then I think about like the size of NFL players, and I think about the size of normal airplane seats. I could see that being an issue.
Are they flying commercial?
If it's first class seating, why wouldn't they have first class seating through the whole plane? Is if it's not a commercial type plane.
Is like, you know, the plane that they charter, couldn't all of the coach seating be like at least, you know, what do they call it? Standard plus,
yeah,
or whatever it is when you fly, right? A little bigger, a little more leg room and everything like that. I'm guessing that's the case. I'm sure they don't go, why would you charter a plane that can seat 250 passengers, right? When you're definitely not taking that many people on the team flight down to somewhere. Like, you don't need to cram the seats in that tight. I doubt that's what happens.
They're probably chartering a plane that's correct for the amount of people that they're taking, but why would it say that they're one of 7 teams that doesn't have first class seating then?
I don't know. I had heard.
If I think of a first class seat, I'm not thinking that they're getting, you know, champagne brought to them at their seat or, you know, hot whatever. I'm thinking that they need width. And when I think of first class seating, I think width.
Okay. Gotcha.
And maybe leg space. But
I think pre-flight drink, like, you know, in terms of they can bring you a coffee or a little drink or whatever. Like that's the nice part about first class.
If it's the size and space issue that seems to be a problem, I think they should fix that too. So between that, and the other thing, they don't have a family room. They're only one of 12 teams that don't have a family room during games.
That's surprising.
They have daycare for players' kids, but they don't have a family room. Like, these all seem like fixable issues. Come on, Seahawks. Jody Allen, do better.
You know, I had heard Matt Light of the Patriots talk about this the other day on a podcast, not regarding the Seahawks grade, but the Patriots grade.
Yeah.
And they were asking him about it. And he's like, look, I was the player rep for the NFLPA for years when I was on the Patriots. And I'm going to tell you something. He's like, don't take these surveys seriously. And he's like, what? Why? He's like, because the players don't. They don't take it seriously. In fact, he's like, I don't know how many guys that you'd hand it to them and maybe they had an axe to grind with one particular area or person on the team. They use it to, try to take out some vengeance on that. Some guys will just fill them out willy-nilly because they don't care and they can't get out of their locker fast enough to start their offseason. There's some guys that will say all the opposite things on their deal just because they think it's funny and try to, and downgrade the thing. He's like, you'd be surprised how many people don't even come close to taking this thing seriously. And so the results are crazy skewed. That's according to Matt Light, but I don't know. I found that to be interesting.
Well, I think the thing that I guess stood out to me, though, was if it's issues within the training room. It just seems like if it's a consistent type issue, you should be able to take something out of these surveys. If not, then, hey, let's actually survey the players and get these things squared away. Maybe make these things to where their feedback ends up being important if they're not taking it.
Yeah. Yeah, because they do survey the players. It's just that the players don't take
first-class seating, then you better fill this out correctly.
Yeah, exactly. Quit screwing around.
Not a Better at Life.
My Better at Life than Skip Bayless this week, Brandon, is for a new Missoula company, and I think this is really cool. It's called Soil Cycle. And basically what they're doing is they're having everybody take all their compostable things that they have from their kitchen and organic matter and things like that, put it in a bucket, and then they get on e-bikes. They ride around, they pick up the buckets, they come back, they put it in their big compost area, they start making compost, and then people can come and pick up compost at the appropriate time of year for your garden and things like that. It's a really cool, sustainable way to actually create fertilizer for your garden. It is 1,000% better than any of the stupid chemical crap that you could spray on it. And one of the big things that I didn't realize until I read this article is that over 50% of the methane that comes out of landfills, which there's a ton of methane that comes out of landfills. I don't know if next time you drive by one, look for the little smokestacks that are on fire because they're burning the gas off from all of the decomposing matter. 50% of that methane that they're burning off there, that comes from just the food scraps that go into the landfill. So this is a way to kind of keep that out of there, actually create some good organic compost for your garden so you can grow a little bit of your own food. And then it's pretty cool that they're doing it a little more sustainably with the e-bike thing. I like my e-bikes. I think they're a lot of fun. And this all spoke to our little prepper mindset out here. And, we're making compost. We're trying to learn how to garden. I suck balls at it, trying to get better. But for Soil Cycle in Missoula, a pretty unique program. I like where their head's at. Better at Life than Skip Bayless.
My Better at Life this week. Hey, we're also sticking to somewhat food related Better at Life this week because my Better at Life is for the Shadow Milk Company releasing a salty drink called Niners Tears. And they're actually a Kansas City area based company. After they beat the 49ers in the Super Bowl, they thought of a way to help celebrate that Kansas City Chiefs title. And hey, maybe as Seahawks fans, we get to benefit from it too, because now we have this Niners Tears. It's a drink. I guess it's milk, but it's salted caramel flavor. And they're going to now, I guess it just launched here this last week on March 16th and hitting grocery stores throughout the Kansas City area. I found out too that because I don't want a bunch of milk shipped to me, and I don't really even want to drink actual Niners Tears because I don't want any part of Niners like entering into my body.
Yeah, that feels weird.
It seems weird, but you can actually get. They're making a limited run of the bottles that they go in. So I feel like it would be better to take an empty bottle to where you could have it at a Niners game when they're in Seattle, and then you can collect the tears yourself. Like you have the empty bottle to then collect the tears, and then you can recycle and shoot. Maybe you can water, you can put it into your compost and get it that way.
Sounds like a contaminant.
It does sound like a contaminant, but you don't sound like you're that great at gardening anyway. So it can hurt.
No, not yet. I am not good at the gardening yet.
But for the Shadow Milk Company, release it, and it's SHATTO. So Shadow, for releasing the Niners Tears drink and making Seahawks fans, giving us a little bit of a chuckle. You are better at life than Skip Bayless.
Oh, heck yeah. Look, I I think this speaks so much to the Whiners fan base because, for example, when we lost to the Patriots in the Super Bowl, were there any New England-based companies that came up with, some sort of product
beverages,
right? That made fun of the Seahawks fandom? No, because we're not insufferable and we don't whine and bitch about every single thing that goes on throughout history. I mean, can you imagine how whiny and crybaby ass that the 49ers fans had to be after that Super Bowl, that this company was like, yeah, I guess we're going to make some Niners tears drink. Like, it has to be next level.
It does. Well, the thing that I think kicked it off is Eagles fans were crying after their loss to the Chiefs. And so because they recognized that the Eagles fans, or that the Niners fans, were crying just as much or more as Eagles fans, they wanted to keep it going.
There you go.
Either that or $15 for a commemorative bottle is a way to make a few bucks.
It surely is. And at the end of the day, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, right? Like, I appreciate this.
I appreciate that too. Well, we also appreciate our members of the flock who help support us at $12 and above. We want to make sure we give you a shout out because, yes, it's you guys help keep us going, and all of our people who support the show. But we want to make sure and recognize our monthly supporters at $12 and above. Let's hear from them now.
Keith Ketover, a.k.a. Flocktimus Prime, University of Cybertron, Little Flockers, roll out.
DCH from Sparks, Nevada, the University of Montana Grizzlies.
Eric Trench, rooting for the Seahawks out of Renton, Washington, graduated from Eastern Washington University.
Jameson Holman from Murray, Utah, representing Mississippi State University. Hail State and go Hawks.
Gary Blum from Chappaqua, New York, and the University of Pennsylvania, your 2016 Pick'em League champion.
Ron Pepper, UNLV Runnin' Rebels, San Francisco, California.
This is Hawk Van Dyke from the beautiful city of London and the capital of the UK.
Lisa in Seattle.
Samuel Gelber, NoHo, California.
David Van Cleve, Camas, Washington, home of the Papermakers.
Leo Jesse, Luleå, Sweden, from Luleå Eskimos and Rennes in France.
Paul from San Diego.
Aaron Fisher, coming in from Henderson, Nevada. Go Hawks!
Chris Boucher, a.k.a. the biggest little flocker, South Central Louisiana State University. Go Mud Dogs.
Hey Seahawkers, my name is Garen Taylor. I live in one of the most beautiful places in the world, North Idaho. Hashtag on the Rose. Go Hawks.
And kicking things off, you heard from DCH and Garen Taylor, our executive producers. Also a big thanks to executive producers Brian Shaw and Has No Clue. Continuing down the list of $12 supporters and above, we start with Becca in Manhattan Beach, Christina in Manassas, Virginia, Craig in Camas, Jeremy in the Bronx, Sven in Berlin, Deutschland, Jonathan in Ridgefield, Kevin in Great Glen, England, Tim in Austin, Texas, Jake in Seattle, Brandon in Huntersville, North Carolina, Timothy in Olympia, Brian in Berlin, Connecticut, JC in Horsford, England, Kevin in Surrey, BC, Connie in Gothenburg, Sweden, Tracy in Kaneohe, Hawaii, James in Beaux Arts, Pepper in Greenville, South Carolina, Marvin in Riverdale, Utah, Jeffrey in Kansas City, Dean in the Greater Hawkdom, John in New York, Patrick in Sacramento, Bryson in Eltopia, Glenn in Ocoee, Florida, Jeremy in Federal Way, Brian in Omak, Jeff in Bainbridge Island, Joshua in Candor, New York, Ken in Hutto, Texas, Dr. G in League City, Texas, Mario in Seattle, Cora in Ditters, Deutschland, Anders in Viola, Denmark, Warren in Dundee, Oregon, Chris in Austin, Texas, Amy in Squim, Joshua in the Greater Hawkdom, Rafe in Beaverton, Oregon, Richard in Killeen, Texas, Joseph in Vancouver, Corey in Ridgefield, Bridget in Redmond, Marlon in the Greater Hawkdom, Ryan in Salt Lake City, Norma in the Greater Hawkdom, Kyle in the Greater Hawkdom, Jamie in Oswestry, England, DJ in Menifee, California, BB in the Greater Hawkdom, Eugene in Henderson, Nevada, Terrence in Dallas, Alexander in Oranienburg, Deutschland, Spooty Poo in Olympia, Kayla in Vancouver, Tanner in Kalispell, Montana, Jason in Panama City, Florida, Gordon in Valdez, Alaska, Jeff in Gilbert, Arizona, Ovary Smasher 69 in Phoenix, Ryan in Crestview, Florida, Ryan in Fairbanks, Alaska, Sean in Cascade, Iowa via Kalispell, Montana, RJ in Kellogg, Idaho, Jason in Portland, Daniel C. in the Greater Hockham, Oliver in Fort St. John, BC, Ian in Seattle, Daniel in Swindon, England, B-Walls 22 in New York, Jay in Fairbanks, Alaska, Russell in Harpenden, England, Sam in Alamonte Springs, Florida, Chris in Manchester, England, Logan in Evansville, Indiana, Corey in Robertson, Australia, Charles in Bremerton, Jonathan in Newmarket, England, Mike in Kelowna, BC, Ken in Stanwood, Edward in the Greater Hockham, Ranger Luke in Olathe, Kansas, Stu in Navarra, Florida, Nathan in Fife, Matt in Sultan, Marty in Melbourne, Australia, Greg in Lake City, Colorado, RJ in Bucyrus, Kansas, The Poetrist in Boise, Idaho, Kelsey in Olympia, Chris in Fort Wayne, Indiana, Randy in Silverton, Oregon, Gareth in Chester, England, John in Waco, Nebraska, Martin in Ferrum, Denmark, Daniel in Oakville, Australia, and Jeremiah in the Greater Hockham. We are keeping this thing going because of our members of the flock. GetInTheFlock.com if you want to help. Join us as well. Shoot, if you want to become one of the people that announces your own name as part of the rundown, you can send us an email, gohawks@seahawkerspodcast.com. And yeah, we'll work your way into, you just got to give your name, the school that you went to. We'll insert you into that group of folks.
You bet. Get to that 12-12 level and get in the Ring of Honor. Get to do that. It's a lot of fun, a lot of bonuses for you guys for that.
A lot more coming throughout the offseason as we're going to be talking quarterbacks leading up to the draft. Yeah, we might not be drafted a quarterback, but we want to look through these quarterbacks going into this offseason because this is going to be, I think, a different kind of quarterback class than we've seen these last couple of years. So we want to make sure that we talk about that. Going to be looking at more players for the Seahawks to take moving forward. Going to be a fun time.
You bet. Looking forward to that conversation for sure. And yeah, honestly, a decent idea by you for this show. Hard time to come up with topics. And after going through it, it definitely made me feel a little bit better about our offseason.
Yeah. And all those low grades that our rivals got, D's, F's, those guys stink.
Yeah, exactly. They're terrible.
Not our Seahawks, though. Not our Seahawks. We're heading into another great season.
100%. 15-win season, and we're going to the Super Bowl, baby.
And I think with that,
there's only one thing left to say.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.